All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another special edition of the Sports Department Podcast. I am Stephen Bologna, joined alongside Joe Paolantonio and Jesse Norman. And this is kind of an emergency podcast. We had a major NBA trade go down last night, the biggest in recent history. James Harden has his wish granted. He is out of Houston, and he is to Jesse's Brooklyn Nets. It is a 4-team trade. I'm going to go through it right now. So the Nets do get James Harden. That's all the Nets get. The Nets traded away Caris Levert, Rodions Kurucs, Dante Exum, 4 unprotected first-round picks, and they also did 4 first-round pick swaps. And then the Rockets then swapped VIctor Oladipo from Indiana to the Rockets for Caris Levert, and the Nets also gave Jarret Allen, this big man, to the Cleveland Cavaliers. So a lot of moving parts in this deal. A lot of moving parts. But the main man, James Harden, is reunited with Kevin Durant, and this is a Nets team that we've heard rumors about getting Harden since the beginning of the year, and they finally struck a deal. Jesse, I'm going to go to you first. Just give me your thoughts.
I mean, this is it. This is the biggest championship or bust trade. I think that there's been, you could maybe argue the Anthony Davis trade, but I think that was a little bit different playing with LeBron. And I think, the haul is kind of similar. But I love the deal for the Nets. I think this guarantees them that they are a contender. They have what I would argue is probably the most talented big three of all time. They have 3 top 15 players at worst in the NBA starting up for them. And there's been a lot of talk about the depth that they lost and, the bench and all that. But watching the Nets, they really only gave up Caris Levert and Jarret Allen, which while those guys were great and very, very integral to building the culture, Levert was a guy that Harden does everything that he does, but better. And Jarret Allen, as good as he's been this year, he's a piece that obviously had value and had to be moved. Taurean Prince, he was having an okay year, but my feelings on Taurean Prince with his time with the Nets is that he's been bad. And Rodions Kurucs has showed nothing since his rookie year. So the picks are important, but there's also the massive amount of pick swaps. And if this guarantees Durant, Irving, Harden staying, for 4 or 5 years instead of 2 years, you do it every time easily.
Joe?
Well, every once in a while, you can think about your Caris Leverts and your Jarret Allens, your draft picks and logistics, the bench, but it doesn't matter right now. You are going to get top 3, a big 3, potentially too talented to fail, too talented for this to falter. I don't really want to hear about a bench. This is as good of a big 3 as you're going to see in the league and as you would have ever seen throughout history. We have to really take in what we're seeing here because top of 2 of the most prolific scorers in NBA recent history with Harden and Durant. When Kyrie Irving comes back, he is an absolute ice cold killer on the court, down the stretch. So the question of how it's going to look offensively, you're going to have to work that out. But do I want Steve Nash at the helm? Absolutely. If there's anyone who's going to know how to, slide Harden in and make sure that everyone gets the proper amount of possessions, I would trust a guy like Steve Nash. Absolutely. The issue, I think, and this is glaring, defensively speaking, we could be looking at a disaster. That's fine, because I do think that they'll outscore their opponent, and we see that offense and scoring means a lot more than defense, I think, in the NBA, especially if you have multiple great scorers. But in a series with a team like the Bucks, I don't know. It's going to be interesting, but if you're the Nets, don't worry about this because you're just going to be able to have the three best players that you've ever had, essentially. Like three of the best players you've ever had all playing together in what seems to be their prime. So there's no need to worry right now about the picks, about the future, because this is such a beautiful top heavy roster.
Yeah. And we seen DeAndre Jordan play against the Knicks last night, and he looked better than I think I've seen him the entire year. So if he's gonna play like that, if he's rejuvenated now that Jarret Allen is gone, I mean, hey, I'm all for it at this point. If that's what was kind of holding him back, that's fine with me. I think the defense is a worry, but I also think there are players that they have that can play defense and that they're going to get on the buyout market and in free agency that will play defense at a relatively high level. Bruce Brown coming off the bench is one of a great perimeter defender in the NBA. And then they've been connected to Rondae Hollis-Jefferson again, possibly coming back. KD is still a pretty good rim protector. He's been coming off the Achilles, and he's probably going to get better as the year goes on. And Harden at this point is going to be upgraded to probably a small forward, power forward at certain times, and is going to be a post defender, which is where he's best at. So I think the defense is a worry, but I also think they can scheme around it.
I think it's cool to see Harden now back with his old coach too, with Mike D'Antoni. So I think that's going to help the relationship a little bit better. And on paper, you think, okay, they have to win this year or they're done. But you look at it, after this year, Harden, KD, and Kyrie all still have 2 years left on their contract. So this year, obviously you want to win, but if you don't, you can get free agents and come back better than ever next season. Now, that being said, looking more into this deal, I think the Rockets could have did a little bit better. I think they should have looked at what Houston was what Philadelphia was offering. I know Houston wanted Ben Simmons and Tyrese Maxey.
What was Philly officially offering? Because all
know.
they've done is deny that they were pretty much offering anybody. So if they weren't offering Ben Simmons, they weren't offering Tyrese Maxey, if they weren't offering, Tobias Harris or anything, like what were they offering is my question. Because all we've seen is that they weren't happy with what Houston wanted. My question is, well, what were you willing to give up then?
I wouldn't be surprised if it was like Ben Simmons and a couple picks, something like that. Nothing too crazy. I think Cleveland really just struck gold in this deal. They get a center that has looked really, really good ever since he made his debut in the NBA. And Indiana, I mean, there were reports that Oladipo wasn't happy in Indiana, and they flip him for a guy that has the ability to be a franchise star. We've seen games like that if he could keep the injury bug off of him. And with Houston, Oladipo, if he's not happy there in this season and they do bad, he has every right to leave. And
he's
then
gone. He's an unrestricted free agent.
And then what was this whole trade for? So I wasn't sure on Houston with that part, but the picks are the big thing. You get 4 fresh first-round picks and then 4 different swaps, so it's 8 total. Listen, this is a Nets team that is more than likely should be in the finals with this roster. It's just sad because this is going to be scrutinized if this doesn't work out. As all Net fans, they're going to think back to the Garnett trade and Paul Pierce. And I know it's nothing like that, but still, big trades like this, you're going to look at the ones that didn't work out. And I think this one is going to work out as long as Kyrie comes back and the relationship is good with the team and your chemistry is good. That's a recipe for success. Now, it is going to be interesting to see if they can take down a team like the Lakers or the Clippers, because I think if they matched up with either of those two, that would be an electric series. I mean, that would be so good to watch.
I think the Lakers are the way harder matchup with Anthony Davis. I think that is the significantly harder one. But I've seen a lot of people say, oh, well, in the East, who's covering Giannis now? Who's covering Embiid now? Who was covering them before? Because Jarret Allen wasn't doing a great job before, and he's looked good this year. But
and what back to guard Kyrie and James Harden?
Exactly.
Looking at Houston right now, Houston's front office, is probably ecstatic right now. They pulled off a great haul for a guy who didn't want to be. They made something out of nothing. But if I'm a fan of the Rockets, this is absolutely disastrous. I mean, within a year, you have went from a perennial finals contender to absolutely nothing, stripped down to the bone. Even getting Victor Oladipo means absolutely nothing. It's the picks. Look, it worked out for Oklahoma City. It should work out for the Pelicans, and it seems like it will. But do I trust the new Houston Rockets regime right now to cash out on these picks and develop some talent? I'm not sure. You know how hard it is to draft a guy who's going to be better than James Harden?
Yeah,
Or
especially in the NBA, the later picks. It's not like the NFL where it's there's a really high chance this guy's going to work out. The NBA drafts are very top heavy. Obviously you have your instances like a Giannis or a Klay Thompson where they work out in the teams.
But even those guys, that's way like that's 14. That's
Yeah.
not 30.
Exactly.
You know.
So this Rocket scouting department is going to have to step up their game. One thing I do love with Houston is I like Christian Wood a lot. I think that's going to help their franchise in the future. And I feel bad for a guy like John Wall. He gets shipped there out of Washington, and he could have dropped every single game a triple double, and it doesn't matter. Harden would still want to leave, and it sucks because the whole team's trying their hardest, and their biggest star that could potentially put them over the edge doesn't give a shit. And that's why Rockets players were calling him out. Boogie Cousins probably going to fight him if he saw him one more time. So good job on Houston.
Harden, I think, did have a point though with he gave the organization everything he had for 8 years. He tried as best as he could to win them a championship. It didn't work out that way, but he clearly knew this is not a championship level team. And he's at the point in his career where he's in his prime, but that prime is going to end in the next couple of years. And he knows that if he wants to win a championship, it's got to happen in the next 2 to 3 years. And Houston wasn't giving him that ability. And if Harden doesn't win a ring, let's be honest, he probably joins the conversation of best player to not win a ring. And I don't think that's where he wants to be.
The thing with Harden right now, and this is great for all players, they basically dictate where they go now. Anthony Davis was the precedent. James Harden is now the shiniest example. But this is a great day for superstar players because at this point they are holding all of the power over front offices, which really is outstanding because you do you want guys to be where they want to be. I think it's just a better game if you end up like that. What it is tough for is people, haters, detractors of the super team, as it's now known as. I do not hear a lot of chants or screams that this is going to, quote, ruin basketball, ruin the NBA, which is a little interesting because you could argue that this is the best big three. I mean, the only thing that would rival it would be if Kawhi joined the Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
As far as pure overall talent. But I hear no screaming, no chance that it's going to ruin the NBA. And I think that's just a little interesting.
It makes me laugh that when Kawhi was a free agent, Laker fans, oh my God, if we get Kawhi, we're the best team ever. And now the Nets get Harden, Laker fans, oh, this is unfair. This is ridiculous that they're allowed to have 3 superstar players in the same team. There's a double standard. But to your point, Joe, with players hold the power, there's no loyalty in the NBA anymore. And it's sad. There's no point of even signing a contract because you could be in there 1 year and then, oh, okay, I want out. I want to go somewhere else. And you could go anywhere you want. And as a fan's perspective, I don't like that, but I understand these are people too, and feelings change. They do. So.
Well, and I think a big thing too is if you set yourself up as a good organization, players want to stay or want to come. You look at Houston, Harden wanted out when the owner switched, the GM switched, the coach switched. Everything that was there for him that made them so successful changed, and he felt like this is not a organization that is dedicated to winning anymore. This is not an organization that wants to win the championship. I want to go to an organization that is going to compete year in and year out. And I think when you draft a player and show that you want to win with them and you develop them the way, you know, Dallas is doing with Luka and the way Milwaukee is doing with Giannis, there's a way to make players stay. I think you just have to double down and make sure you show them that you want to win with them and that you want to build a culture and an organization up with them, as opposed to, you know, you draft a player, you're kind of middling to bad for, you know, 4 to 8 years, and then they leave. I think, you know, that's entirely their right if you haven't done right by them as an organization.
I mean, I look at what James Harden has done, and this is nothing new. Jimmy Butler with the Timberwolves threw a tantrum, and he called out all of his teammates, and he did not get, I think, half of the flack from James Harden. And I think James Harden, 2-time MVP, at this point deserves a little more respect than a guy like Jimmy Butler. I mean, you're talking about an all-time great here in James Harden. I understand that a lot of fans are turned off to him because watching him play can look ugly. It's visually not pleasing, and it could get a little tired if you're on the other team. But what we're failing to understand here is that you are going to get a Nets team who's going to be the most fun team to watch with the how all of these guys can score offensively glued to the television. I mean, we've had better teams before, but I am so excited to watch these three.
Once Kyrie returns,
I think at least offensively, this is the best big three I think we've ever seen by far.
Oh,
just the scoring prowess of every single player and the efficiency of every single player is remarkable.
Now, Jesse, last question here for you. Let's say the Nets don't win a ring with this big three. Would you ever regret making this trade, or is this something like you had to do it or something like that?
I think you had to do it. I mean, it's easy to say if they don't win a ring, you obviously regret it.
Yeah.
But if this makes them, you know, takes the organization to the next level and still just keeps them competitive and keeps them building the brand of Brooklyn and everything, because we all know they've had to, you know, compete with the Knicks for the spotlight, and they've had to compete with these other markets. I think this is what you have to do when you're a big market team, when you have Kevin Durant and you have Kyrie Irving and you are expected to be trying to win a championship. You need to push all your chips to the middle of the table and you need to go all in. And if it doesn't work out, I mean, you tried. And I think it's the best thing you could have done. You know, if you look back at the Celtics trade, you can scrutinize the hell out of that because, you know, they got a 37-year-old and a 38-year-old guy. This is an all-NBA MVP in his prime that was being offered and shopped around, and you had the ability to go out and get him. You have to go out and get him.
It's really not about if you win the ring, it offsets all of the issues. But in my opinion, you're going to get a guy like Harden on the Nets in his prime. You have to do it. If you have the opportunity to do that, you have to do it. Steve, this is what you have been imploring the Knicks to do for years.
Got to start, yeah.
Just to even make you feel as a fan like they care. And that's what it's about. And I think that there's sports fans all over the place that really just want their teams to try. Mortgage their future for right now. It kind of makes you feel like you're a part of it.
I'm with you, Joe, and that's we're gonna wrap with that. You know, this is a Harden trade that got finalized like that. It was the rumor started in the morning, and by the afternoon, Harden was a Brooklyn Net. But thank you all so much for listening. Thank you, Joe and Jesse, for hopping on. Jesse, good luck to your Nets as as they're going to make a championship
Harden
run. Most
playing
likely.
Saturday night.
Big game.
Harden's
For
playing
the
Saturday against Orlando.
Knicks. They beat the Knicks last night, so
9 guys.
yeah. Thanks, Joe. How
9
the Warriors
guys.
doing? Yeah. But thank you all so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to us on all our socials at Sports Dept Pod. It's DEPT Pod. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Joe is making his way to the kitchen. He's going to make a ham sandwich. 4-piece chicken. We have an NFL
preview
of NFL divisional round. No, is it divisional round? Yeah. Divisional round
divisional.
coming up very soon. So please stay tuned for that. If not, we'll see you next time.